Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, the Lakers are hot, winning their 8th straight. And we're going to talk to Benjy Ritholtz from Knicks Film School about the Knicks side of that game last night after the break. And the Warriors win another one with Jimmy Butler thanks to 40 from Steph Curry. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S.
Morning.
Another awesome night in the NBA. Actually, we had one really great game to end the night.
That's all you need. That's all you really need.
It's true. You know? Yeah. I mean, we're going to manufacture other things to talk about, but man, what a game at the end of the night. The Lakers won their 8th straight game by beating the Knicks in overtime. And we got to say, Luka and LeBron, what a duo, man. Their numbers in this game, pretty incredible. You get two guys with this level of playmaking and this level of scoring. And then you've got Luka Doncic grabbing all these rebounds. And you've got LeBron with what do you have, 10 assists or 12 assists? No, excuse me, 8 assists last night. Luka had 12 assists. LeBron grabs 12 rebounds. Luka had 7 rebounds. You basically have two guys who are a threat for a triple-double in every single game. And that just doesn't feel fair.
They are two versions of the same thing, right? Which is like just these heliocentric offenses that can run everything through them. And LeBron has now added the cool wrinkle of being able to be excellent off of the ball. The catch and shoot
3-point shooter.
Yeah. The catch and shoot stuff. Like he hit 2 massive threes in that fourth quarter to help the Lakers get that lead back. There's a lot of screening stuff that they do where they'll have LeBron in the short roll and he'll make a bunch of plays out of that. They'll throw him in the post. So LeBron versatility aside, these are two guys that can generate offense at such a high level for the Lakers that they can go on these runs. And we were texting it, while the game was going on. Second quarter Lakers were bad. Like there was no one else that could hit a shot. Austin Reeves, I thought, struggled throughout this game, just wasn't himself offensively coming back from that injury. But they found a way to still get things going in that second half. Part of that was Dalton Connect, I thought. He hit some huge shots, finishing that third quarter, entering the fourth quarter, just being a release valve for the Lakers offense. And that's what LeBron and Luka need, right? They can be all creators in the world, be the best creators they can possibly be, but they need guys on the other end to hit shots. Gabe Vincent did that tonight. Dalton Connect did that tonight. And LeBron himself also did it as well.
And those were the only guys that hit shots, by the way, was Gabe Vincent and Dalton Connect, because that was part of the Lakers' problem in the second quarter. Their offense just ran flat. Their defense in this game, I thought, did a pretty good job of containing Jalen Brunson until late. Jalen Brunson puts up 39 in the game, and then he had to leave he sustained an ankle injury. So we're going to get hopefully more on that over the weekend. We'll have more on that Monday. But for the Lakers, this is their 8th straight win. They're the 2 seed. This team is getting quality minutes in places that I didn't expect. I mean, Jackson Hayes, who has started this little, we're not going to call it a leap, but this little step forward that he's taken this season. He started it early on in the year. He looks like an absolute player for them. And I think that's thanks to Luka Doncic and his pick and roll mastery.
Yeah, it's so easy to play with Luka. I mean, man, he can get any guy who can run and jump and just be a solid screener, like a lot of easy buckets. And that's what happens with Jackson Hayes. I think he's been all right defensively, too, just doing his part as a rim protector for the most part. I think one of the interesting things for me is like they found a way to be versatile tonight defensively. So they went to their small ball lineup. They went to the big lineup with Jackson Hayes to close, which is like they now have a couple of different looks to what they can do on the defensive side of the ball, which is more intriguing than what we thought initially with this Lakers team of them just being able to go small. Yeah.
And then they've got the Celtics Saturday, which
very excited for that.
Yeah. When was the last time this felt like a huge game? Which it does.
Yeah, it always does. But this feels much
even
more
bigger than, I mean, it hasn't felt like this in a while. I mean, you've got the Celtics as the defending champs. You now have the Lakers not only on a win streak, but reborn
contenders
to a certain degree with Luka Doncic. It's interesting. Lakers, Knicks, huge. Lakers, Celtics, big. I don't know. What is it? The 90s again? Are we back? Although the Celtics weren't that good in the 90s. Let's talk about the Warriors, because the Warriors are good. They weren't good in the 90s, but they're good now.
They weren't.
Now 10-1 with Jimmy Butler. Steph Curry hit one of the more ridiculous shots I've ever seen in my life, S. It was a turnaround buzzer beater from 43, 44 feet.
Half court. Yeah.
A literal turnaround. Not just he didn't make it look like a turnaround. He did a turnaround heave, nails it, scores 40 in the game. He got a little mad in this game because the Nets were being pretty physical.
The Nets were being very physical with Steph. And there was a moment where, I think it was Keon Johnson tried to get the offensive foul call. And you could see that Steph was just getting riled up. And he doesn't pull out the night for no reason. And tonight he pulled out the night when he hit that dagger shot.
Shout out to Ian
corner.
Eagle, by the way, or Ian Eagle. Is that his name? Ian Eagle. He called it as Steph was doing it. He said night. I mean, he's just seen it too many times. But you're right. He was frustrated, and rightfully so. Steph gets hacked, man. Steph does not shoot enough free throws.
He does not get a good whistle.
It is insane to me, and I guess it's just because they feel like he doesn't need the help.
Right.
Unlike James Harden, who gets some of the most insane
the other
calls.
Night, man.
He got 50. He got 50 bogus calls, is what he got to get 50. But Steph, rightfully frustrated. But
I didn't think
Jimmy
we'd
Butler,
walk into James Harden slander tonight.
No, of course, I want to talk. Let's talk about the Jimmy Butler part of this, because Jimmy Butler is just he has completed the puzzle in a few ways for the Warriors, and we'll see how it works out in the playoffs. But defensively, it gives them someone that is essentially another Draymond Green, as far as just being able to quarterback your defense, go out and defend against the best player on the other team. But offensively, they gave him another Draymond Green too, because he doesn't care about getting his own shot. So you're saying you've got two guys who are completely unselfish, one of whom, Jimmy Butler has offensive skill. Draymond doesn't. But Jimmy he's a threat to score. And so now you've got two unselfish guys looking to feed Steph. Steph has a 50-point game and a 40-point game since Jimmy Butler got there.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise to me. And I think that's a big part of it. Is just Jimmy Butler came in and he knows the goal. Find Steph.
Jimmy's also an excellent post player. So a guy who high post area, you can give them the ball, and what the Warriors love to run are those split actions off of high posts, right? So in the same role that Draymond Green is in, you can throw Jimmy in there. And to your point, is a much more aggressive offensive player. So you don't have to only worry about the pass. You're worried about Jimmy actually trying to go and get a bucket.
Cuts. They had a post up for Quentin Post, and they ran a split cut with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. I mean, so they're able to mix in not only running the actions off of Jimmy Butler, and think about this. Jimmy Butler's a threat to keep on a DHO.
100%.
Which Draymond is not, because he doesn't want to take the free throws. So there's this sort of Swiss Army knife that they've added in there.
He can plug in wherever. And, I can't believe people overthought the fit with Jimmy. It's just, he is perfect for everything they want to do because he's so unselfish. He's willing to move the ball. He's a connector. I've heard people talk about him in the same way Andre Iguodala was brought onto this Warriors team, connecting kind of a bunch of actions together. He does some similar stuff. He's obviously a much better offensive player than Iguodala was back then, but it's just, he connects everything they want to do. He elevates their product.
Yeah. And model citizen everywhere he goes. I mean, I bet the locker room's great. It definitely is great. Okay. And we got to talk about the Magic, because Orlando has lost the Magic. Basically, they lost another one. They lost to the Bulls, which is really a bad loss for them. They are
Kobe White, though. Great game from Kobe
White. Yeah, 8-20. The Magic are 8-20 since January 5th. That's when Jalen Suggs went down with an injury. He did play one game in there for 15 minutes. Remember, he left with the back issue.
Right.
They've had, in that time, the fifth worst record. This is since January 5th. The 27th ranked offense. They're 28th overall on the season. So that's not really that big of an aberration.
Yeah.
But they've been the 13th best defense since January 5th. And they're still the second best overall defense in the league. So the real difference in their game, they've never been an offensive team. but their defense has dropped off so much that the offensive stuff is now glaring, and it's a disaster right now.
So the defensive side of the ball, you could clearly look at Suggs and missing the point of attack defender that he is. That's clear as day, right? But I think overall, one of the other things that I look for defensively is their connectiveness on the backside, because they've had moments where Franz and Paolo were great wing defenders. I haven't seen that as much recently, and I wonder if it was because they were so much relying on that point of attack defense and on Suggs being the guy who's wreaking havoc, causing deflections, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe it's just he was compensating so much for some of their flaws on the defensive end that we're now seeing them really blossom and turn into these big issues for them. And offensively, Dave, I've had the chance to watch this Magic team for the last 5 games because the Raptors played them twice, and I've caught the last 2 games for this team. They are so easy to guard offensively. Easy, genuinely easy to guard, just because you can dare guys to shoot. They're shooting 30% from 3 this season. It's just easy to find a solution to guard them. You can pack the paint, and if they can't drive on you, they can't bully their way to the basket, they're living with outside shots that they're just not making. So it's just too easy to guard Orlando right now. And if you're thinking about a play-in game or a playoff game where you could be decided by one single game, where it's a streaky, we've seen it before in the past where a playoff team will get eliminated because the other team shoots 45% from 3. That might happen to this Magic team.
Yeah. It's a big difference between now and a couple months ago.
Yeah, can you remember?
The league has just changed.
I know.
Completely.
You remember
overnight.
when we were talking about Jamal Mosley coaching and
how is he holding it all together? And now
Yep.
we're like, wow, awful job down there in Orlando.
The magic is gone. Yeah.
All right, guys, stick around after the break. Benjy Ritholtz from Knicks Film School is here, and we're going to break down Knicks-Lakers and talk a little bit about some of the Knicks issues as they're looking ahead to the playoffs. We talked about the Lakers side earlier in their big win over the Knicks. Now to talk with us about the Knicks side of this, Benjy Ritholtz from Knicks Film School, here to school us a little bit on the film from last night. There were some problems for the Knicks, and we've been watching them the last couple of weeks run into problems, especially against the better teams in the league. What's the biggest thing that jumped out from last night's game for you, aside from Jalen Brunson limping down the hallway?
Yeah, I think it goes back to a theme that we've actually seen all year long, but it's been exacerbated, I'd say, of late. And as Josh Hart has gotten less confident shooting the basketball as the season's gone on, teams have been more emboldened to stick their centers on him and put their best wing defender or largest wing defender on Karl Anthony Towns. And I think what we're seeing is, and we saw it down the stretch for sure, Cat is basically frozen out of the offense because if you screen with him, it's just an easy switch. Yep. Josh Hart's the one that screens over and over again, and it just becomes a lot of Josh Hart. And Josh Hart does a lot of great things. There's a lot of record scratching when he catches the ball because he's not willing to shoot. And I just think the Knicks need to find a way to tilt the offense more towards the guy they just traded for to be their second best player, and that's Karl Anthony Towns, who barely touched it in the fourth quarter. I think that to me is the biggest takeaway.
What's the solution to that? Like, what do you think is the way that they can fix that with the current version of this roster?
It's a great question. And I'm actually not even sure there's a solution with this lineup unless Josh Hart decides to become a much better shooter in the offseason.
Right.
And he's so far into his career, this has always been a thing with it. It's not, that's hard to imagine that being the fix. I think they can do some things the way they initiate possessions to get Cat touches, even if it's just like an elbow entry, because they'll go to this offense with the second unit when Campaign plays with Cat, where it's like enter the ball to Cat and run some split cut action. Cat's a really good passer out of there, and maybe we can get him involved as opposed to just like a pure spacer, which is really what he was in that fourth quarter. I think that's one possibility, just to get him involved a little bit. But at the end of the day, if you want to free up Brunson, which is the priority, and you saw why, the guy's exceptionally good in these scenarios, like you're going to want to screen with whoever the center's guarding, and that is Josh Hart. So I don't know if there's a great solution. I don't know if you guys have any opinion on it.
He's getting Robertson right now, right? And come playoff time, that's going to be a big problem. I don't think teams will guard him much at all. They're gonna make him prove he's willing to shoot. The thing is that he goes through these stretches where you feel like he gains confidence, and it waxes and wanes. And I think it depends on touches. I wonder though, Mikal Bridges also, he's been struggling to shoot the ball, and I wonder, maybe this is also part of it, right? Like they're playing off of Mikal a little bit. Like he's not sticking shots, and everything's getting a little bit tighter. And I want to talk about this because it's time to talk about Jalen Brunson. What the Lakers were able to do early on, I thought, where they were zoning up on the side that Jalen Brunson was isolating. I think that is an issue the Knicks are going to have to overcome. Landry Shamet made a really great back cut on one of those possessions where the Lakers fell asleep, but they've got to do stuff that isn't just, hey, Jalen, break down these 3 or 4 guys. I think that this is also,
he's been doing it, though.
I know, but symptom of the same disease with the Josh Hart stuff. So is it just they need to find more flow in their offense, you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And the thing with Mikal, you mentioned, he was basically absent in the last night's game offensively, like did absolutely nothing for the most part. He has struggled above the break, especially. Like the corner 3 is there. He tweaked his form, maybe raised the release a little bit so that he's having a little bit of trouble generating the power from above the break, and he just hasn't been consistent from above the break. And I don't think teams are really respecting him out there. OG Anunoby has shot it really well of late, but generally, and as you know this well from watching him for years, much more of a threat in the corner than he is above the break. So there's just not that quick release top of the key shooter. Now it could be Cat, of course, but we know sometimes Cat just doesn't want to get the volume up. He likes to drive the ball. It's not what he wants to do. That's why Dante DiVincenzo was such a tremendous loss, because talk about a quick trigger from as deep as you want. Like he would shoot it in an instant, so that if you're loading up on Brunson the way the teams are, it's that quick outlet to DiVincenzo. If there's even a sliver of space because you loaded up on Brunson, it's a shot. And they don't have that outlet now in the starting lineup. Now, Deuce McBride's the closest approximation to that guy. He didn't shoot it well last night either, but generally a good shooter and a willing shooter, which is why those lineups with Deuce in place of either Mikal or Josh have performed so much better offensively. Yeah. And I think that's what the team's kind of grappling with, is like this starting 5, which was the plan, the idea, the vision. It's been disappointing offensively, and I think it's for a lot of the reasons you're pointing out, Dave, which is the ability to load up on Brunson and not get punished for it is really limiting their ability offensively.
Yeah, you're basically hoping that the backline help falls asleep, essentially, because you're just not worried about a skip pass to a shot because the guy that's in the corner is Josh Hart, and he's going to penetrate, and the defense is going to be able to rotate over. Let me ask you about Mitchell Robinson coming back. Yeah. I do think every team needs to basically have 2 bigs, be able to play smaller, and now the Knicks are able to do that. How hard is that going to be to reintegrate, given, Josh Hart's importance to rebounding and transition and all of the other things? I mean, it does seem like Josh Hart is kind of the guy who's going to wind up losing minutes to Mitchell Robinson. Is there a world in which Mitchell Robinson winds up, like the starter going into the playoffs?
Tibbs has not gone away from the starting lineup despite the evidence that maybe he should at times. Even if you started that starting lineup, which I understand, maybe even politically I understand, because these are your 5 guys and you spent a lot of equity getting the 2 of them in this past offseason, so you're not going to bench anybody. I think it is a fair critique of Tibbs that he hasn't gone away from that lineup early enough in the first quarter or the third quarter and mixed in some of his better lineups. Over the data suggests there are just better lineups out there than that starting unit. I don't think he's going to break it up. I will say last night's game was the first time that we saw the Mitch plus Cat lineup at all. They had not done it the first 3 games Mitch has played. That was the first time we saw it. They actually played effectively together. Cat defensively, we know, is just more effective at the 4. This was obviously Minnesota's conclusion, and we saw it tonight. Switchable, he was actually pretty switchable out there. Luka got him a couple times in overtime on tough shots, but Cat did a good job on those possessions. Did a good job on Reeves a couple times, even LeBron a couple times. That just looks better when he can be a little bit more of a switchable 4 than a drop 5, certainly. And Mitch allows you to have that drop 5, that anchor behind him. And so I do think those lineups should be a part of the picture. I just don't think Tibbs is going to start it. Maybe finish it depending on the matchup, but I don't think he's going to start it.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it gives you a different tool to work with. And I think given the playoff situation and heading into the postseason, that's at least another look. I'm wondering if you think Deuce also plays a huge part in this equation, because there is some chatter like you should eventually start Deuce McBride just because of that 3-point shooting volume. Is that something you see them leaning into more heading in the postseason, especially now that Brunson might be out a little bit with this ankle injury?
Man, that's rough. I hope not. Deuce, I think, has to be. He has to be. And that, look, again, Tibbs isn't really the type of coach, having now experienced him for several years and knowing his history before, that like the playoffs come and he's going to like severely alter things. That's just not really his style. Like, it is a day-to-day progression, get better, and then do the things that you do even better when you get to the postseason. That's more of the philosophy. So I don't anticipate any like massive lineup shifts or rotation shifts when they get to the postseason. Yeah, he has rode this starting lineup. They're playing in an insane amount of minutes. They're going to like break records in terms of, if OG hadn't gotten hurt for a couple of weeks there, they were like going to have more minutes than any lineup last year played by like the 60 game mark. They're playing an insane amount of minutes. So he thinks that they're going to figure it out. And I think Deuce has to be a larger part of the story. The data tells you, I think their 5 best lineups that have played like 50 plus possessions include Deuce McBride.
Yeah. I mean, just having another guy who can get a shot off the dribble, as we know, when you get to playoff time, it's the single most important thing you can do for any lineup you have.
He was great last year,
ball
too.
handlers. Yeah. And he can shoot the 3 off the dribble, which, they only have Brunson and Cat that can really do that. And I think that, he's a guy who essentially just the role that he fills and the number of boxes that he checks, he's going to have to play.
Yeah, and I would say on the defensive side too, like he is their best ball pressure guy by a long shot, and he showed it last night. I thought he was phenomenal defensively. He didn't have a good offensive game at all, but he was all over the place.
When you get into the matchup hunting that you're going to run into with Brunson, I do think that being able to scram switch with him is going to be a huge thing, and pre-switching everything and trying to hide Brunson. Let me just ask you, like, as we're looking ahead to the playoffs, okay? Yeah. This team still has a lot to prove, in my opinion, especially since it's just getting Mitchell Robinson back. What do you think this team should be focused on for the last 20 or so games to be ready to make a run to the finals?
Number one for me is schematic versatility on defense. And I think they've started to sprinkle some stuff in. Again, not necessarily a feature of Tibbs teams to get creative defensively. I think based on the personnel that they have, the fact that your 2 best offensive players are below average defensive players, you have to get a little bit creative in how you cover pick and roll. And this team, you look at the half court defense data, it is really an ugly picture. It's one of the worst half court defenses in the league. As Tibbs defenses do, they take care of the controllables. They rebound well, and they don't foul. And that allows them to kind of stay in the middle of the pack defensively. But when you just look in terms of like pick and roll efficiency against their half court defense, they're bottom of the league. And it's because for most of this season, they've played cat and a drop at the 5, and that is just easily exploitable. And not only that, you can bring Brunson's man into the action. They're playing a hedge and recover scheme pretty consistently, and teams just get used to that and they start to find their outlets and they make open threes. They have to find ways to get either more switchable at times, which they've started to sprinkle in. You saw it again last night. They have to be able to play OG at the 5 and move Cat to the 4 at times, even when Mitch isn't playing, so that OG's the one in more of the actions guarding the main screener. This is a pipe dream, but I wish they sprinkled some zone in. They haven't played a 1 possession of zone all season long. I think you look at the most creative defensive coaches in the league, even on teams that have great defensive personnel. The OKCs of the world, the Miami's of the world.
They'll throw zone in
there.
They
throw zone in.
The Lakers played zone last night.
They did indeed. It's like, it's like a little bit, it's hard to digest, like a coach who's not willing to sprinkle that in when you're playing Cat and Brunson 35 plus minutes just to give offenses are too good now. Pick and roll offense is too good now to just never throw different looks in. That's been a little disappointing. I thought he might do that this season. He hasn't. So that one's probably not going to happen. I do think there are other options that he might go to. Again, having Mitch at the 5 as a look, OG at the 5 as a look. I want to see a little bit more. And then mixing in your blitzes, mixing in your switches.
They've got good personnel if they wanted to next on pick and roll.
Yeah.
If they wanted to, anyway.
Do some of that as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Because what happens for this defense too often is teams target Brunson and Cat and the Knicks let them do it. Yeah, and you have
Very
these, and you
consistent,
have Bridges and Anunoby behind them who are just too often not involved in the play. And if I'm the Knicks, my whole philosophy would be, let's make sure that our wings are involved in the defensive possession, no matter what the offenses are doing.
Look at what OKC does with its disruptive long wings.
That's
I
right.
think that the Knicks could be instructive.
And next thing would be a way to do that, right? Is just, okay, you're gonna try to get Cat in the action, but now here comes Anunoby from the weak side, and we're gonna get Cat back down into the action, like those types of things. I wish we saw more. Maybe they'll start building some stuff in before the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what they'll need, man. Look, everybody knows the record of them against the top teams, and tonight was another loss against a top team. How confident do you feel heading into the playoffs with this roster, knowing the whole? They're all in. They're all in as you possibly can be, basically.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Not great. I think, look, Knicks fans, I don't really know if they appreciated that. Like, by the All-Star break, it was pretty clear we're going to face Boston in the second round. Like, the gap between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 remain pretty large. It would take a pretty epic collapse by the Knicks or someone on top of them, which isn't going to happen because Boston and Cleveland are too good, like, for that matchup to shift. And so, I don't think they're ready to beat Boston in a series. I don't think they have the solutions to do that yet. And to your point, they're all in, which makes it hard to digest a second round exit, which seems likely. Again, presuming they beat a Detroit or whoever ends up in the 6, which let's hope they do. And I think they would, but that might be a tougher series than people realize. I think you have to have the perspective of, okay, yes, they're all in, but they're all in year 1. And I do think that's an important caveat because it doesn't usually happen in year 1. And
first year of developing their identity.
First year of finding and starting to problem solve. And they'll be able to build the roster a little bit around the edges as more picks come available, et cetera. So I think it will take some time. Cleveland and Boston are awesome this season. And maybe this isn't the year. Doesn't mean there's no hope for this team to find their contention window at some point in the next 2-3 years. I think they've built something that can last for a few years, and that's, I think, why they did it. And that might not bring any Knicks fans any comfort, but I do think it's important perspective.
Well, at least they're going to be almost guaranteed make the second round. Like, they are good enough that this is a second round
team. By the way, this is much better than what it was like 10 years ago.
I mean, how about 5 years ago, right? Like, they've come a long way. Yeah. Benjy Ritholtz, thank you so much for hanging out with us, staying up late. Guys, check him out over at Knicks Film School. They really do a good job, obviously, breaking down like X's and O's, but, they're fun guys too. Thanks for hanging out. That's going to do it for the show. For Es Baraheni and Benjy Ritholtz, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.